1st, 2024. Brendan and I, glad to be here with you, man. Got a great show today. You
Great
love the
show
SEC.
today.
We're going to touch all 16 of them in the next hour and change. We've got Coach
Who
Matt
does
Dean.
this? Who does this?
Who does it?
goes
Nobody.
around and talks to the voice of,
The
these
Texas
teams,
Longhorns,
the Texas
Craig Way.
Longhorns, Oklahoma. Look, this is it's kind of show. It's kind of show we put together here. To really delve deep into our new brethren and sisterin. I don't know if that's right, but
Brethren and sisterin.
Welcoming them into, the SEC, the nightmare, the excitement, all of it. And Rob Brown, hats off to you, man. Good job.
Look, man, it's a team effort. It's not just one person. I promise you that. And we got great support. Cannot thank people enough for all the help we get. You know who you are. Our sponsors and everybody. Look, Craig Way, the voice of the Texas Longhorns, joins us. Coach Matt Dean, our good friend John Hartwell, the AD at ULM, an inside peek at what goes on in college athletics. Coming at you. Smash subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner.
That's right.
Again, it's Thursday, August 1st. It's an awesome month. They're putting on
the pads.
Where
your children are at? Isn't that
do you know where your children are? They should be watching sidelines. That's where they are. Be right back.
In school.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, just for the record, I just came in from my advisor. Hook 'em. It's two words, but you pronounce it as one. Hook 'em, and you do this like that. So a lot of Auburn people even do WDE. What's your chant down there at ULM? Coach John Hartwell, as an AD, a coach. You're a CPA. You're a coach. You're an AD. But I love all these. I love all these symbols. How's everybody doing this morning?
Yeah, I think I get called SOB sometimes too, Rob. But you gotta take the good with the bad.
You know what SOB stands for? Smart old boss.
I like that. Yeah, ours is talons out for the Warhawks. So
I love it. Matt Dean, the Lynx at the Memphis Zoological Garden, which is across the street from Rhodes College, the most gorgeous inner city campus of any city in America. And I'm talking Duke, Southern Cal, ain't nothing like the Quarry, Rhodes College. But they've got a lynx cat over there at the zoo, and he's a really cool thing. You can see his ears. They stick up. All right, lot going on, man. Pads are on. I don't know. Some schools started last week because Georgia Tech and Florida State are going to kick this thing off. And, man, been watching ACC road trip. It's so weird. They're out at Stanford. But we know what, guys, I know everybody's all freaking out about all the travel and everything, but these guys all want to be professional athletes, and the girls do too. Get used to traveling. I mean, that's part of the gig. But damn, man, when you get to the season like this, and Matt, you know it as a coach, and John as well, everything else, all those distractions go away, and it's time to actually play college football. How ready are y'all for this to start?
Yeah, I think everybody's ready for it. As you said, there's been a lot of peripheral stuff going on. All that impacts collegiate athletics, whether it's the House settlement, the continuation of name, image, and likeness. The softball player, speaking of Stanford, going from Stanford to Texas Tech for what was originally reported as $1,050,000 a year, now upwards probably of $1.2 million, which is, that's about what Rob Brown makes for each of his clients, trading on a daily basis. So, but yeah, the fact that
it's like a Tuesday afternoon for Rob.
Yeah.
that teams are reporting now, and our guys got a brief break. They broke from their last summer workout last Friday morning. They reported back yesterday afternoon for 4:00 meeting. Crazy to think we actually tee it up 4 weeks from tonight. Open on a Thursday night against Jackson State here at home. So it is here upon us. There's excitement. I've used this line for quite a while with booster meetings this time of year. I said, hey, it's the greatest time of year to be an athletics director, because every team you have is undefeated and every one of your student athletes has a 4.0. So let's keep it that way.
Yeah. Isn't it great, Matt? I mean, everybody's undefeated. I love that.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Good to be back with you guys. It's funny because we started yesterday, John. I'm sure you guys have a kickoff in terms of staff meeting. We had our 34th time I've been to our initial staff retreat for our athletic department, and just sitting in that room with some of the new faces and the coaches that are first-year head coaches and some of the coaches that are first time on our campus, it just kind of rejuvenates you. And I can't believe you're only 4 weeks away, John. It's here. And I think once we get the media days, completed like you guys did last week, we know it's a sprint. We're looking at great matchups early on. I just can't believe the depth of the SEC conference. It just amazes me that there's going to be some teams that go 6-6 in that league that are really, really, really good football teams. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been talking about how some teams have no home football games in October. And looking down the SEC schedule, Auburn has 5 straight in September, therefore 3 road games and a bye in October. But LSU has 1 home game in October. Missouri has 1 home game in October. Oklahoma 1 home game in October. Ole Miss 1 home game in October. And Texas 1 home game in October. Now, you got to remember, some of these schools, Arkansas plays A&M in Dallas in a so-called neutral site, but it really is. Arkansas has their biggest out-of-state alumni concentration is in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, but there's a ton of them out there. And, I still think everybody will tell you down here in the South, October's a great month weather-wise. But as soon as, John, this, it's going to be 110-degree heat index when this team plays us down here in Monroe or wherever, and then you get the 1-in-a-century cold blast comes through. You can't count on the weather. I mean, the guys, we see these 10 and 14-day forecasts. They can't even get really the 2 and 3 day right. If you're down on the Gulf Coast, damn well every day around 5 or 6 o'clock, there's going to be a thunderstorm for about 30 minutes, right when the lifeguards start picking up the umbrella. That's just a part of life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, I know a lot is said about weather and, fan attendance and all of that stuff. I really think, you can say across the SEC, across the Big 12 for the most part. I mean, all of us are in humid areas where there's heat. I think the bigger difference are, and this applies to some of these early season matchups, and you alluded to Stanford and the ACC. When you travel across 2 or 3 time zones and you're going from altitude to low altitude, I think that really has more of an impact. But again, we're talking about 18 to 23-year-old kids. I think it's a lot more for the media to have something to talk about than it really impacts the kids. But I do think altitude probably plays more into it. And the interesting thing to see will be, and when I was at Utah State, we kind of used this rule of thumb. If you were going over 2 time zones or more, usually try to go on a if it's a Saturday game, you try to go Thursday night.
Yeah.
Kind of acclimate some. It'll be interesting to see some of these USC and UCLA Rutgers matchups or series like that where they're going across 3 time zones to see if they actually go a day early.
Sorry, I was just I'd grown up in Colorado and playing sports in Colorado, and then cutting my teeth working in sports TV broadcasting, covering stories for Avalanche and Nuggets and stuff like that with putting packages and things together. That was always a narrative for the away team because I would often work for the away feed. As you're kind of coming up, in the ranks, that's how it works in sports TV trucks and all that world. But nonetheless, that was always the story. That was the story when Florida went to Utah for the first game last year.
Yeah.
That whole mess up. I think that everyone always comes out with a new theory, right? It's 24 hours before, or it's now they say it's not so good to be out there, a day before. Then it's like 2 days before, and then do you take the Diabox and do you not take the Diabox? Like you go through this whole thing. Athletes are athletes, and I think you do have to acclimate a day or two before being an athlete because you just got to get your lungs right. You got to get your feet. And I think that's going to be really hard for these guys in the future because I think that's a great point because I think that's underrated. I really, really do.
Well, think about when Stanford leaves that beautiful Palo Alto and flies in to play Clemson in a September game. They're going to get off and go.
That's different. But that's different. Going to sea level is different. When I would come from altitude, I'd be like, man, I can run forever down here. I can run and run. Look, in fact, I would play better in the humidity when we would come down because I also played high school football in Florida, and I'm like, man, I could run wind sprints all day long. I got air forever, right? You do feel that way. It's interesting how the mind plays into that, right?
Well, it's psychological.
Well, when you get to Colorado from sea level,
yeah,
I don't care how in shape you are. You go out there, you are gassed.
You're
gassed. Like within the first 30 seconds, I don't care how in shape you are. You'd be like, go sprint. You look at me and be like, I can't breathe because there's no air. There's a difference. There's literally no air at 5280 in Denver, right? Or 5,280 feet above sea level.
Well, Wyoming. If you look, John, University of Wyoming has the High Altitude Performance Center, and Laramie's like 7,700 feet. I remember going to Mexico City.
The Olympic Center in Colorado Springs. I mean, that's you've got the full Olympic Center down there for. So,
and both of those places, Wyoming and Air Force and Colorado State, not to the same extent, but they all have signage coming down the tunnel, going into the stadium, trying to mentally mess with the opponents walking into the stadium as to what the altitude is.
Yeah, I mean, that Missouri played back in September of 2019 at Laramie, and Francis, one of our regulars on the show, big Notre Dame fan, said, "Bobby, take the Cowboys to win this one straight up. The altitude will get them," and it did. Missouri, as Doug Dean calls them, lost. Guys, look, right now there's a lot going on. I got to ask somebody, tell me this. I was told by someone last week that the House settlement of $21 million isn't a one-off deal; it's forever. Is that true or not? I hope y'all can answer better than the Secret Service guy. Please don't say you're going to get back to me.
A 90-second answer. You need to change that, unless I heard it wrong and my hearing could be that bad. You need to change your M to a B. It's billion.
No. I'm talking about per school.
You're talking
per
about
school, 21 million. Yeah.
Distribution. Yeah, it starts for the Power 4 schools between 20 to 22 billion. But I tell you the thing that not that many people outside kind of the inner realm of athletics have talked about is the squad size limits, which, oh, by the way, with that squad size limit change has also come a change in allowable scholarships.
Right.
So now in football, in theory, for most schools, that's reducing the squad size. Or most FBS schools, you can only have 110 on the roster, but you can put all 110 on full scholarship. That's 25 more scholarships in football. One of the huge differences is in baseball. Baseball, which is an equivalency sport, which means you can award partial scholarships, goes from 11.7 to 34. So that's 22.3 if my South Alabama upbringing math is correct early in the morning. That's a significant increase in baseball. Softball has an increase. It's by 12, I believe. But track and field, can go to 45 full scholarships on both the men's and women's side. I mean, if you look at the history of track and field in the NCAA, maybe Arkansas, maybe Oregon, but I don't know a whole lot of people who can just go out there and do that. I'll give you just a snapshot. So for our 17 sports that we compete at the Division I level here at ULM, if we were to change from where we are today to what is allowable for the 25-26 academic year, that would add 157.9 new scholarships. Let's just say that's $30,000 a pop. That's $4.8 million just in scholarships. And when you look at the ancillary charges that go with that, additional, academic tutors, additional trainers, all of those additional things, the ancillary cost that you would have to add to add that many scholarships, it's astronomical. And, my last point to that would be, I'm going to use a poker game as the analogy. And even though we've got 65 Power 4 teams, I'm looking at this, a start of 20 to 22 million a year and sharing your revenue rights. What each school is having to pay for the next 10 years for settlement in arrears to kids for name, image, and likeness over the last 10 years. These increases in scholarships, can you imagine? I can't even imagine what Stanford's number is, because they play everything the NCAA sponsors, including Tiddlywinks, I think. Yeah. But you go all in on these things. I think at the end of the day, for the number of schools that can put all their chips on the table and say, hey, we're going to do all of this at the maximum allowable level, that may be 30 schools at the end of the day. Not, correct. Even at the Power 4 level, there are a lot of schools who can't go all in. They don't have enough chips to go all in.
Yeah. Well, and I see it, Matt, on Ask the ADs Thursday edition. This is a question that's asked a lot. When a school, let's say a school brings in 200 million, just make an even figure, 200 million in revenue, and they've got 25 sports. Okay. Let's say they have a surplus of 9 million. They're not trying to build up. I mean, that's cash that's there. Kind of go inside of the budgeters, the controllers, and John's the CPA, but explain to people who are asking, what are they doing with all this money? People think colleges are all flush with money. I think people think, that great famous painting by one of the world's renowned artists, Dogs Playing Poker. They think all the college ADs are in there together doing this. It ain't that easy. There's no way it is.
No, just, John knows everything at the Division I level. At my level, it's interesting because, every sport we sponsor is revenue producing for the college because we're non-scholarship. So therefore, we bring in, this year we brought in 140, 150 student athletes. Our average MTR on those kids is probably 20 to 25,000. So do the math. That helps the college out significantly. On the flip side, the college as a whole sets a goal that's separate from athletics. We were 100 down as a college this year. We had a $4.1 million deficit that we had to take from some revenues that were created by endowment that hurt us long term just to sustain. And we have a $400 million endowment. So it's not like we're a poor institution. And John can answer this question better than I can, but if we had a surplus at our level, we're always looking to enhance facilities because we don't have an NIL platform that is as significant as some of these other institutions you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's the answer from a smaller school perspective. But the reality is, John said it really wonderfully last block, is there's a lot of people that can't even engage Okay, if we want to talk about Maverick and flight terms here, they are not able to engage because of what's the reality of the financial situation.
Yeah, and money's always an issue. Whenever someone says money's no object, it's the number one object. That it always seems to happen that way. This college football season, we hear explain to people when they say TV revenue, John Hartwell, that they make. I think $4 billion is the number I'm hearing this year that'll be made from TV. Golly, and think about where would we be without Roone Arledge, who decided to take the cameras down from the press box to the sidelines and do close-ups of the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. If it weren't for Roone Arledge, what would we have today? And Howard Cosell, with perhaps in the history of head rugs, that may be the greatest head rug ever, or the comb-over Bill Murray had in the movie Kingpin. That thing was the winds of Santa Ana, but I digress, John.
Yeah, and so this is where it really comes into play, and some of the jockeying among the now Power Four leagues, and clearly the SEC and the Big Ten have distanced themselves in terms of their television package, and in turn, with the league doing that, what is distributed to its members. And some people may say, well, hey, if the SEC, if they're getting 45 million or 50 million per school,
yeah,
and the Big 12 or the ACC is getting 35 million per school, what's the big deal? That's a huge amount of money for everybody.
Yeah.
Some people who look at it in simple terms may say that, but in today's world, again, when you've got 20 to 22 million of that, it's really only going to be in the door and out the door to student athletes,
right?
To be competitive on the recruiting side. Then if there's a $15-20 million gap between what you're getting and another Power Four is getting, that's substantial, because that's going to allow that school that's getting more, or that conference, to further accelerate the difference between the two. And then the gap, you go back to the gap between the Power Four and the Group of Five, whether it's, us in the Sun Belt, or the American, or Conference USA, or the Mountain West, then that gap is exponentially more. You talk about a $15 to $20 million gap going the other way.
Yeah.
Ours is more like a $25 million gap going the wrong way. So, there is some settlement that's going to come out of this shakeup. But again, as I mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago, I do believe the one thing that the House settlement does, because so much of not the 20 to 22 million going forward for each school, but the $2.7 billion settlement that is being paid off over the next 10 years by every member of Division I. I don't think, at least in the first 5 or 6 years from now, that the Power Four could just walk away. They could. I mean, that could happen any day. But the financial impact to them, if they walked away and then all of a sudden they're on the hook for all the money that was being spread across the rest of Division I over that period of time, is astronomical, even for those who seem to have endless bank.
Yeah, and nobody has endless bank. I mean, you have revenue, but you also have expenses. All right, got to ask these questions. I'm going to do rapid fire, bounce it back and forth before Craig Way joins us in this segment. Now, we hear all this talk about facilities all the time. A few years ago, everybody was upgrading their stadiums and spending millions of dollars. Florida and Auburn both came in, I think, just in time with their football-only facilities, the Waltholt Center at Auburn, the Hebner Center at Florida. Matt, do you see the facilities arms race in college athletics slowing down, almost grinding to a temporary halt right now with all this other crap they got to pay for?
I do not, because if I have the ability to build something nicer than John, I'm going to do it. I mean,
John?
It's just competitive in nature. I mean,
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think it boils down to the amount of the resource pool that your institution or your donor base has. I do think some of those who have gotten out in front and have the nicest facility here, I'll give you an example. If you're a family of 5 and you have a 3,000 square foot house, then that's a pretty nice deal in a nice subdivision. Much nicer than if you had a 1,200 square foot condo.
Yeah.
But is it really necessary for you to have an 8,000 square foot home with, swimming pool, tennis courts, all that stuff? It'd be nice if you had the cash, but if you had that cash in your pocket versus spending that and it was the discretionary dollars were somewhat limited, that's what I think you're seeing. Those schools have gotten out in front and are probably in the upper 25-30% of facilities as they stand today. They are shifting some of their focus to go solicit donors for NIL to put more cash in kids' pockets.
If I'm an AD, you know what I do? I send a letter out to every fan, alumnus, supporter, friend, whatever, who's in their late 60s and says, when you have to do your RMD, your required minimum distribution, which you'll have to start taking now at age 72, remember, rather than have that money taken out and come to you and be taxed, the tax man take a bite out of your ass, you can have 100% of that money go directly to the charity or the school of your choice. I'm letting them know about that because Sherlock Holmes' assistant, Dr. Watson, once said famously, there's nothing more deceptive in life than an obvious clue. Matt Dean, home of the Lynx. What do you think? Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I think it's a great idea, Rob. My question to you is: don't you think that's happening already to extend in all these places?
No,
you don't think so.
I don't think it has.
Rob Brown's over there in different departments.
I've actually approached some schools about it, and they looked at me like I had horns on my head, like because it was outside the box. I'm just saying, there's got to be Rhodes College endowment. Think about this: $400 million in a school with less than 2,000 students. John, being the CPA that you are, you still got a staff of accountants. Here's a question from Junior Samples in Wedowee, Alabama, over on the 431. Junior says, what's the difference between a comptroller, and a CPA?
Man, that's
fairly
a good
basic
one.
question, I would think.
A controller is trying to limit the amount of cash outflow to some extent. A CPA looks big picture. Hey, what? And I tell that, this applies to, and I'll apply it to an athletic department, whether it's your compliance director, whether it's your chief financial officer, whether it's your facilities guy, for our department to be at its very best, our administrative heads, we've got to be facilitators for success, not inhibitors. And that's really, really important.
All right, we're going to bring in our guest. John, stay with us if you can. I know you got a lot going on today.
I got about 5 minutes. So.
Yeah. Craig Way, the voice of the Texas Longhorns. Welcome to the SEC, Craig. You've got an unbelievable resume. Not only does Craig, is he the voice of Texas football, men's and women's basketball, Texas baseball, but he broadcasts 7 high school football state championships over a 4-day period. I bet you have lots of bags of throat lozenges on hand, but you've got one of those booming, distinctive voices. A lot of times, and I've been watching a lot of your stuff before you came on the show, but first off, welcome to the SEC. My family from my first marriage all lived in Round Rock when he was getting his master's at UT. He was in charge of ROTC out there. They're from the Valley in Harlingen, Fort Worth, Mercedes, San Angelo. Love Texas, was just out there for media days, but welcome aboard. And I've got Coach Matt Dean from Memphis at Rhodes College and John Hartwell, the AD at ULM. They'll be coming down to play y'all this year. But thanks for joining us here on Sidelines. Glad to have you.
Hey, good morning. The first thing when I popped on and I heard you talking about controllers and things like that, I thought, did I pop into a Wall Street Journal conversation. I thought this is well above my pay
Blame
grade.
it on Rob, Craig. We blamed it on
I
Rob.
thought,
Yeah, blame it on me.
I got into the wrong window. I thought I dialed into something incorrectly. No, it's good to be on with you. It's funny. I live in Georgetown, about 30 minutes north of Austin, so it's very close to Round Rock, and I was just down in the Rio Grande Valley. So last weekend I had a grandson swimming in the Texas State game, so I know all about those places. So good to be on.
Yeah, and let me thank you. And I'm going to ask you this. John is an AD. We were talking about the money and all the stuff that's happening in college athletics. You're what I am, a radio junkie. I say this on the show all the time. I still have the white transistor radio I've had since I was a kid. That thing's 40 plus years old. And I would dial up. My dad taught me about the White's radio log. It lists every AM station in the country, and I can remember hearing on WHO 1040 Des Moines, Iowa, Christmas Eve, 1980. University of Wyoming head football coach Pat Dye resigned today. Dye is considered to be one of the leading candidates for the vacant Auburn head coaching job. And I remember the station out in San Antonio, is that it's AM 1200 or whatever, and just KOAI.
WOAI.
WWL in New Orleans.
WOAI.
I can't go to a game without having my headsets on. It's like an army trying to fight a war without air support, or in the old days, an army trying to fight without cavalry. The importance of radio is you get all the details, the sideline reporter and everything. And talk about just broadcast day, but you do all the sports. This is incredible stuff.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina. That's where I'm originally from. Now, I moved to Texas when I was 18, and I've been out here since then. But I did a lot like you did when I was younger. I was scanning the radio dials. And you could pick up a lot of them on the East Coast, obviously. I could pick up Yankees, Red Sox broadcast, listen to the Boston Bruins on WBZ in Boston, WBT in Charlotte, of course, a big signal. You mentioned WOAI in San Antonio. That's our San Antonio-based affiliate, and it's one of those 50,000 watt AM blowtorches. And the nerd in me would say, WOAI, like WBT, were one of the 25 radio stations set up by the Federal Communications Act of 1934, which mandated that there needed to be a radio station to where no matter where you were in the contiguous 48 states, you could pick up a radio station like KOA in Denver or several of those other ones where there's nothing else. They called them clear channel stations. It has nothing to do with the company Clear Channel, which is the parent company of who I work for, iHeartRadio. But it's where you'd hear those stations all across the country. You mentioned WWL in New Orleans. So I used to listen to a lot of those.
John, I know you got a question or two before you got to go to next meeting. You're kind of busy, but on here with Craig Way, the voice of the Texas Longhorns. And it is two words, folks. Hook 'em. That's just the way we say it in the South. And y'all are definitely in the South. People are asking, are Texas and Oklahoma in the South? I'm like, is the Pope Catholic? Does he wear a funny-looking hat? Come on. God, Texas is definitely in the South.
Yeah, Craig, good to see you. Look forward to coming down there. I think September 21st is the date we come down there. Hey, my counterpart at your place, CDC, and I read an article about him yesterday. That dude is one of a kind, but man, he can make it rain money, and he's done an outstanding job for you guys. But look forward to coming down there. Obviously, we come every other year down that way to play Texas State down the road from it. Actually, last year when we played at Texas State, we stayed at I think there's a Hilton out there by the airport. That's an old an old Air Force bunker or something? Yeah.
It looks like it's certainly the way it was built on that property because the airport itself is at the old Bergstrom Air Force Base.
We look forward to coming out that way. New coaching staff, and obviously our schedule picks up quickly. We play 4 weeks from tonight. We have Jackson State at home to start, and then UAB here at home, and then we have an off week before we come to you guys, and have to go to Troy the week after we go to Austin. But looking forward to it. Wow. And looking forward to meeting you when I'm out that way.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that ULM is one of those schools that kind of holds a place in my heart. I grew up well, I grew up in North Carolina, but I've been in Texas since I was 18, and I went to college at North Texas, and of course they were in the same conference, in the Southland Conference when they were then Northeast Louisiana, and it was a great rivalry back then. I remember obviously when Bubby Brister was playing quarterback, and then Stan Humphries was playing quarterback when they won the national championship at '87, and it was fun times and good rivalry. And I like Monroe. In fact, my wife and I were driving to North Carolina for vacation this summer. We stopped and spent a night in Monroe, and I've always had fond memories of that. So I'm looking forward to
that's
seeing
great.
you guys.
We've got a lot of ties like that because my son and his wife live in Greensboro. We're actually going up there next week. Had my first grandchild about 2 months ago, and they live in Greensboro. So, hey, and Stan Humphries, I see him about 3 times a week. So here's a crazy story. Guy was the Super Bowl quarterback for the Chargers. He coaches girls basketball, high school basketball at the school that my youngest children go to. So he coaches girls basketball. And by the way, he's at the country club about every day. I think he's not even a scratch. He's a -2. And he usually after basketball is over in March every spring, he goes to Palm Springs and plays on the NFL alumni circuit for about a month. So
that's a great life.
Wow. Yeah, he was an amazing quarterback. I'll tell you, in '87, that national championship year for them, North Texas had a real good team as well, and they went to Monroe, and they were playing for the conference championship. And I was in the radio booth working with the great Bill Mercer, who was the broadcast voice of North Texas at the time. And we go down there, and at the Indians, as they were known back then, before Warhawks, they jumped to a 24-3 lead, and we thought this game is over. And then North Texas came back and came all the way back to 24-23 and had the extra point blocked and lost. So then Northeast NLU won the Southland, and we thought, well, North Texas isn't even going to get an at-large to get into the FCS playoffs in the 1AA. They went home. They beat La Tech 10-5 and had their star running back break his ankle, and they got an at-large bid. And what did they do? They sent him right back to Monroe, and without the running back, they had no chance. And NLU won 30-9, and they went on and won the national championship. I was glad for them, and I'd gotten to know Pat Collins really well when he was the head coach, and then later in his later years when he was coaching at Longview High, which goes to the high school things that Rob was referring to. But like I said, great memories and great connections there. Obviously, in my background with ULM back when they were
wow, that's crazy. Well, I'll give you one more tidbit, and I got to run. So a lot of people don't realize that on that FCS national championship, or 1AA at that time, national championship team, there was also another quarterback on that team by the name of Doug Peterson, who happens to have won a Super Bowl as the Philadelphia Eagles head coach and is the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So yeah, we've had quite the lineage of quarterbacks, and I think in all likelihood, when we get your way, God willing, and he stays healthy, a name that one of the all-name team guys, and he's been a backup the last couple of years at Oklahoma, but General Booty will likely be the starting quarterback.
Yes, sir.
Nephew of Josh Booty, and his dad Abram was a wideout at LSU, so we're excited to have him on board.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, guys, it's always great being with you. Have a great day, and look forward to seeing you next month, Craig.
John, we'll talk later today. Thank you so much. Matt, just listening to it, this is what my scouting report on Craig Way was. He is just genuine and real. And I always look for people. You have so much respect for all levels because you were not born on third base and thought you hit a triple. You have worked your ass off to get where you are, and you've been all over. And the fact what you do for high school football in the state of Texas is kind of like what Ed Sullivan did for the Beatles and Elvis Presley. That's how big it is what you do. And so kind of Matt, you know this. Matt's got a son he was 4 years with Jimbo at A&M. He's now with Dan Lanning going into his third year at Oregon. So Matt, coaching's in your blood. Jump in this conversation. Matt sits there like the wise counselor that he is, but get in this thing, man. This is great stuff.
Craig, it's an honor to be on with you. You know, you said you're living currently in Georgetown, I believe you said. We
That's correct.
at Rhodes College, we were in the same league as Southwestern University, which is in Georgetown, and really love that place. Have a lot of friends that work there. So we would make the trip back in the day, and they're coming back in our league where we would go. When I was coaching basketball, we would play, let's say, Southwestern on a Friday, then Trinity in San Antonio, Texas on a Sunday. And Trinity has a huge history in athletics, especially in the Division III realm. But I will tell you this, when we first started playing Southwestern in the 90s, we would stay sometimes like below Round Rock or maybe even North Austin to make the trip up there. And there's hardly any traffic. And then you come back 25, 30 years later, the area is just booming so much. And I think even Georgetown has probably expanded from a population perspective as well, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's both the good and the not as good in that it's one of the fastest growing cities in the United States now. Because and Matt, you've seen this, and you have as well, Rob. When you have a major growing metropolitan area like the greater Austin area is, the communities around it are certainly going to be big. And Round Rock has gotten much bigger, and Leander, Cedar Park, up northwest of town. I lived in Cedar Park for a long time before I moved over here into Georgetown, but it still has its really, really nice points. And I'm sure, Matt, you remember the square in Georgetown with the courthouse and great restaurants and things like that. And so it's built up quite a bit, but Southwestern is still a charming little campus, and they're trying to get it going after they, had not had football for, I believe, something like 50 some odd years. And then they brought it back in 2013. And so they're still trying to build it up over there, but it's a great school and a great little campus over there at Southwestern. So I do keep up with them as well as the other schools in the area. And John was talking about Texas State and what G. Kinney has done to build up that football program. They're the preseason favorite to win the West Division of the Sun Belt. They've made their first ever bowl game and got their first bowl win last year. So it's all growing in there. In addition to the fact that the Longhorns are who they are.
Talking about with Texas, I've been to Austin many times. I've been to some games out there. DKR, Ken Capps and Bo Carter were with me at Media Days in Dallas, and we have Anwar Richardson on here from time to time, orangebloods.com. Coach Jackie Sherrill, who lives in Wimberley, which he says is between Austin and San Antonio. It looks like Dallas, Fort Worth, and Arlington in between is going to happen down there as well. But let's talk about the Horns. Last year at the end of we were September 9th when Texas went in and beat Alabama. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm an Auburn grad. I was in tears that night. But anyway, I might add, you're saying was your broadcast on the Texas Football Network, you said, any of those folks that are questioning, is Texas ready for the SEC? Well, here's your sample size. How fired up are y'all? And Feinbaum was out there a few weeks ago, and you had a pit bull concert going on. I mean, it was crazy. I would say bedlam, but can't give shade to Oklahoma State, but that was a big deal out there.
Yeah, it meant an awful lot. And for folks who don't know, what Rob was referring to was the SEC kickoff party that the University of Texas had. It was on June 30th. It was the day that the crossover happened when Texas was crossing over into the Southeastern Conference. So they had a massive celebration on campus near the tower. Paul Feinbaum was there with his show, and Paul and I joked about that at SEC Media Days when he had me on his program, and we were talking about how it was so explosive and so big. And he said the one thing he learned, was make sure, and the commissioner, Greg Sankey, said the same thing. He said it in his opening address. He said
he did.
One thing he learned was, don't be the last act before you get ready for Pitbull, because it'll, people are impatient and wanting it. And it was a great celebration, a great day. And I think it was emblematic of how eagerly anticipating Longhorn fans are for this move into the SEC. When it first was announced, that was 3 years ago, there was kind of a, well, okay, we'll get there when we get there thing, because Texas had just hired Steve Sarkisian, so Sark had not had a chance even to really put his bags down in Austin yet. So folks were very, very concerned and wanting to see where the direction of the football program was going to go. Well, we've seen that now and what Sark is doing and building up there. And so now folks are very, very excited and looking forward to this first season in the SEC.
Yeah. And Matt, as a coach yourself, you look at Steve Sarkisian, his career is a lot like a lot of coaches. And then he went through with Nick Saban, and he was off to Austin in 21. They played Alabama in 22. That game with Burt Auburn, the kicker, what a great name. Steve Sarkisian knows what an SEC team is like from the inside out. Don't you think that helps them more than people even want to begin to realize?
And I know they're loaded at a lot of positions, Craig, but I just love, how can you not love the quarterback room? It's obviously, in my opinion, and I'm a little biased because I pull from my son, but I think it's the best quarterback room in the country. I also think you guys got two really intriguing games to me this year on the road. The first of all is early, and I don't know if you've ever called a game in the Big House, but it's got to be fun for you to go to the Michigan venue and play them. I think, they lost a lot, plus their head coach. I clearly like Texas in that game. And I'll tell you, the last game of the year, maybe it's not the last one, but when you play A&M, I think the first matchup is going to be at College Station, if I'm not mistaken. My son was on Jimbo's staff for 4 years. He actually helped out a little bit in the recruiting process. I know he knows Connor Wakeman and the family really well, so he's a very talented quarterback. I think A&M will be improved with Elko, but gosh, you guys, I know it's a tough schedule, but you've got the right games at home in my mind this year. Don't you feel the same way? Will Georgia come?
It's an unusual schedule, Matt. Let me put it to you that way. First of all, several different things. One, the fact that they're going back to an 8-game conference schedule when they've been playing 9 for several years in the Big 12. And I should have thanked John for ULM being willing to, because Texas had to find a fourth non-conference opponent when this first was coming down. And it was great that they were able to work that out, because Texas does not schedule FCS opponents. They haven't had an FCS opponent on their schedule since 2006. So they want to play FBS opponents, and ULM was willing to be the fourth non-conference opponent. So that's great, and I know Texas fans are grateful for that. Now, to your other points about the scheduling, and this also rolls into your thoughts and your questions about this trip to Ann Arbor. The conference schedule for Texas is unusual in that they play all 3 of their rivalry games, and they are kind of, especially in the case of Oklahoma and Texas A&M, but Arkansas, you can put it in. They had a great rivalry with Arkansas for many, many years before Arkansas left for the SEC in 1991. So all 3 of their rivalry games, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M are all away from Austin. None of those games are. Now, the Oklahoma game, we know what it is. That's the Red River, and it's played on the fairgrounds of the State Fair in Texas, and it's an absolutely unique environment, more so than I think than pretty much anywhere else in college football. And that the stadium is exactly half burnt orange and white on the north end and half crimson and cream on the south end. Its own thing. The Arkansas game, it worked out that Texas was going to be the visiting team there. Sark's first year, 3 years ago in 2021, they went up there. They had 1 game left over from a schedule way on back. They had a return game due to Arkansas. They went up there, and the Razorbacks were ready and beat Texas pretty good. It was Sark's second ever game as head coach at Texas. And then A&M, it's this rivalry renewed. And they were very, very insistent. They wanted that first game to be in College Station. Now, a lot of Longhorn fans have kind of chuckled about it and said, return to the scene of the crime, because it was 13 years ago, the last time they played, when Justin Tucker hit the walk-off field goal to win that game. So those 3 games are all away from Austin. So the remaining road games for Texas, period, conference or non-conference, the remaining road games are Vanderbilt on October 26th in Nashville, and the Michigan game. So I've had folks ask me, and Rob, I had folks ask me this at SEC Media Days, and they said, well, Texas is in the SEC. Which stadium are you most looking forward to going into this year? And I'd said the Big House. And they were like, what? And I said, Ann Arbor. And I said, well, that's not an SEC stadium. And I said, you have to understand, the rivalry games are great, but I've called games in all of those stadiums. And nothing against Vanderbilt. I'm looking forward to it. Nashville's a wonderful town. Looking forward to going. but that Michigan game's been on the schedule for a while. And, so I'm looking forward. I had a chance in the national championship season in 2005, Texas played at Ohio State, and they're going to play there again next year when they start up another 2-year home and home with the Buckeyes. And it was a truly unique and magical experience, much, Rob, like the trip to Tuscaloosa last year. So those games are great for college football, and I hope we always have a healthy collection of those for college football. But it does, to your point, Matt, set up an unusual schedule for Texas. And to your point, Georgia's coming to Austin and Florida's coming to Austin. They open conference play with Mississippi State at home on September 28th, and they do have Kentucky at home on the 23rd of November, the week before they go to College Station to conclude the regular season. I think the crux of that schedule will be, Matt, when they have on back-to-back weeks, the OU game in Dallas and Georgia coming to Austin. That's going to be a real fulcrum of college football.
Everybody's talking about, the Big 12 schedule's not that tough. It is. I mean, in the old days, Texas would play, or Oklahoma and Texas would play in Dallas at the Texas State Fair, which goes on for like a month with Big Tex. Howdy, folks. Big Tex here. But I was driving by there a couple of weeks ago, Matt. It's awesome. Just right there in Dallas. And, I mean, if it can be fried, if it ever ran, flew, swam, or crawled, it can be deep fried. I think Craig would vouch for that. But the Texas State Fair.
Yeah, the deep fried butter convinced me if they can deep fry butter, they can probably deep fry just about anything else. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I listen to the Musers on the ticket in Dallas a lot. I've got a bunch of friends in Dallas, and they send the Musers, and they deep fried butter. Here we go. You're like, wow. All right. So, Texas fans, I've been out there to games, and I've been to places where they've come. Matthew McConaughey is from Uvalde, Texas. He is a Longhorn fan. There's a lot of notable Longhorns. My kids have never gotten over the commencement speech in May of 2014 from Admiral McCraven. First thing you do in the morning is make your bed. No matter how your day goes, long, miserable days, running in the sand, swimming in the cold Pacific Ocean, swimming at night with your SEAL buddy with shark-infested waters, you come home to a nice, clean, comfortable bed that is made. I mean, there's a lot of what starts in Austin, changes the world. But all right, so Texas fans, what do they think about the SEC? I mean, rivalries. We had Oklahoma. We had Chris Plank from the Sooner Network on last week, the sideline reporter, talking about it. I mean, that's 30 million people in those two states, 35 million. Two of the top 10 winningest programs in the history of college football. Where are you most excited about playing in the SEC on the road? We're going out to Austin November 9th for the Florida at Texas game. And Ken says we got to go eat at Cisco's. I mean, there's so damn many good restaurants out there. My kids go out there a lot for all the music, for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Panic, and other great bands. Certainly not the Lawrence Welk Show, though. But Austin's a pretty damn cool town. It's an awesome town.
It's a real cosmopolitan city, for sure. And it's got its own unique places, just like you were talking about Nashville. I'm looking forward when the SEC basketball tournament is in Nashville. Look forward to going there as well. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to get to all of those SEC venues in time. I'm looking forward to calling a game someday whenever it rolls around in the conference rotation in the swamp, between the hedges. They're in Knoxville. We were supposed to be, Texas was supposed to play in Death Valley at LSU in 2020, but we know what the world was like in 2020. That game was canceled. They had played Texas the year before in Austin, incredible game, and Joe Burrow had a lights-out performance, and Justin Jefferson a big catch as well, and LSU won by a touchdown and went on and won the national title. But I'm looking forward to visiting all of those venues, and I've visited several for basketball and a few for baseball. I've not been to too many. I've been to Arkansas for baseball and LSU at Alex Box Stadium for baseball, but I haven't been to Dudy Noble at Mississippi State. I have been to Ole Miss for a super regional in '05 for baseball. So yeah, I'm looking forward to visiting all those venues.
And you know what, Matt, hearing the anticipation in his voice, like going to the big house, that'll be big, and that's going to prepare you, I think, for the SEC. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, listen, anytime you can go into an environment of over 100,000 fans, it can help prepare you for just about anything. And so Michigan may have had quite a few graduates come off that national championship team. And obviously, Sherrone Moore's the head coach now instead of Jim Harbaugh, but it's still Michigan. It's still the big house. They can still run the ball, and they still have great defense. So it's going to be quite a challenge. And that's why I think a lot of Longhorn fans are really, really looking forward to the trip to Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with Craig. Donovan Edwards, I believe, is back in the backfield, Craig, for Michigan. He's one of the finest running backs Big Ten last year. And, line of scrimmage, even when Michigan they were kind of down for a few years, they've always had line of scrimmage guys. And their defense should be very solid, but I go back to that game. You lose J.J. McCarthy and you look at the quarterback room Texas has. It's going to be a fantastic environment. I grew up in the state of Iowa, Craig. I'm actually a Hawkeye. That's disguised in the South now. Mm-hmm. But, those Big Ten games are just, I think it's great for Texas. You're playing early in the year too, which obviously in a non-conference game, that's going to happen. But I tell you what, so there's not going to be any weather elements. And it's going to be fun watching you guys play. On a side note, my son's at Oregon, and last year I think your only regular season loss was Oklahoma late when Dylan Gabriel made that pass in the corner of the end zone. He's at quarterback for Oregon now. And on a side note, my son says that Dylan Gabriel is one of the best leaders he has ever been around. So we're really excited in Duck Nation to see if things can go our way again this year.
Well, I will tell you this, when you look at the quarterbacks that these teams faced all season long and then what Texas faced, the two best quarterbacks they went up against were Dylan Gabriel to Oregon, and then when they had to face Washington in the playoff, it was just a tremendous performance there. And you spoke of the Texas quarterback room. Yeah, I think Quinn Ewers is primed and ready for his third season at the helm, and Arch Manning is waiting in the wings. But there's that environment, like they're great. Bud has been very, very upfront in saying, "This is Quinn's team. I'm here. I'm part of this team, and I will help in any way I can." But Quinn is the quarterback, and he is, and they get along well, and they make each other better, I think.
Yeah. Craig, you talk about the way Arch Manning is. I mean, growing up in Memphis, we grew up with Archie Manning, Peyton, Eli. I hunt down in Lambert, and I've been to Drew 100 times. It's down on 49 in the Delta. The humbleness, it's so cool. When we were at media days, when Quinn Ewers walked up, Ken Capps yelled out, "Show us your belt buckle!" But it was pretty. I thought that was cool. I mean, it's definitely Texas, and it's authentic. Now, here's a question I got to ask you. In the SEC, when I was on right after our show Friday, I was on the show out KREF Radio in Oak City, Norman, with Chris Plank on his show, and I said, I'm here at Toomer's Corner. I was in Auburn on a couple of days for meetings. I said, there's hundreds of people coming in and out of Toomer's drugstore right now. It's a Friday morning at 10:09 a.m. Central. Just taking pictures of this place, just buying souvenirs, and it's July 26th. And I said, you're going to be welcomed by people. Now, we want to beat you, these schools, but you're going to be fed and given drinks, and people love having you be part of the family. Now, Ken says, and he maintains this 100%, he goes, I just don't see OU and Texas fans hanging out under the tent together, drinking cold beer and having fun and everything. I said, why not? He goes, it's not going to happen. But I think it will, given time. Agree or disagree, or am I nuts?
Oh, I think that there are always going to be some fans that'll hang together and tailgate together, but there is quite a bit of rivalry between the two. You brought up Toomer's Corner. Here's what's ironic. I have never had an opportunity to call a game between the University of Texas and Auburn in any sport. in any sport. I haven't been able to do that. Texas and Auburn played each other in football in the 80s, but I haven't had a chance to call. So I'm really looking forward to that. Now, ironically, I have done a football game with Auburn, a little thing called the Iron Bowl. I did it for Westwood One on national radio when Auburn played Alabama. That would have been, I believe, 2016. It was the year the game was at Jordan-Hare, and it was the 13 consecutive times when Alabama was kind of bleeding out the clock.
2015 would be that year.
2015. That was it. 2015.
Yeah.
And I did that game for Westwood One that day, and I had a great time. And the weather was beautiful for late November, and so I had a great time. And it didn't cross my mind then. But later, when it was announced 3 years ago that Texas was going into the SEC, I thought, I can't wait to have an opportunity to go back. And I didn't get a chance to visit Toomer's Corner and go into the drugstore and have a lemonade or any of that. I didn't get a chance to do that, but I sure as heck want to do that in the future.
Well, Auburn played Texas in 83, 84, 83 in Auburn, 84 in Austin, 87 in Auburn, and 91 in Austin. So they played 4 times when Pat Dye was the coach. It's just one of those, football aristocracy programs. And that, I think the coolest part about it, and Matt, you just nailed it about, now Dylan Gabriel's at Oregon. But when we look at Texas, you look at, Bo Davis is gone from the defensive line. Talk, if you can, in the last few minutes here, and I appreciate you going along with us, but love having you on here, and do us a favor and retweet us and put us out there. We'll do the same thing for you. I know you've got a show every afternoon on AM 1300. I think The Zone out in Austin. So I'll be.
Yep.
I like to tap in. That's what this show is. SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU. The Buddy Martin Show at night down GatorbaitMedia.com, and the best Fridays in football with Urban Meyer and Buddy Martin, and our executive producer Brendan Martin in Ocala. So we want people to fly.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't jump in. I was working behind the scenes making Rob look real good. Craig, Brendan Martin here. Nice to meet you. I'm from Colorado, so I grew up around Texas football. So I grew up around Longhorn football. I had girlfriends that went to UT. I've partied on, was it 6th Street or 8th Street or 9th Street?
6th Street.
It became 16th Street. I've done South by Southwest. I have been around Austin and love Austin, right? Great city, great town. I know how prideful Texas fans are about, Texas football, because I got a lot of friends that are big Texas fans. And we text each other, of course, back and forth all the time. And it's like, welcome to the SEC, right? Their perspective is like, we're going to come in and we're going to show the SEC what's up. Like, the Texas fan, at least my buddies, are all about, we're going to come in and show what's up. You guys don't know Texas football. You're about to know Texas football. We're going to own the SEC. And I'm playing tongue in cheek here. I'm not trying to be serious or put you in a bad spot or say something you wouldn't want to say. But I mean, it's fun. I like that about Texas fans. But, how realistic, should Texas fan be about coming in the SEC, as far as first year out?
Well, I would say this, Brendan. The first thing is you make a very good point of pointing out, and I'm going to put the accent on this, that those conversations you're having are with fans.
Sure.
There is a galactic 100%. Light year difference between what fan expectation is and what this program is all about. That there's never been, I've never heard a University of Texas athletic department official, a football a coach, or a student athlete or basketball, anybody else talk about, coming in and running the show. That became kind of a running joke, I noticed, that was kind of permeated through the media about Texas is used to running teams. And from a fan perspective, maybe they think about this, but, Texas isn't that far removed, as we all know, from not being that competitive. Now, in the 4 years under Tom Herman, they had 4 winning seasons. They went to 4 bowl games, but you could only take so much Alamo Bowl. And eventually, and the Alamo Bowl is a great bowl, but when you play it 3 times in 4 years, it's like, hey, the horizons and the sights have to be set higher. So Chris Del Conte and also Kevin Eltife, the chairman of the Board of Regents, and the president of the university, also all got together and said, this is the guy we want. And they went after Sark. They brought him in, and he knows what life in the SEC is all about. That's why you're not hearing them say any of that kind of stuff, because they know what a grind it is. And it was a grind in the Big 12 as well. There's some really good football programs, top 10 teams that played in the Big 12. But I think the biggest difference that everybody understands, and they do understand this with the football program, and I think you could say the same thing about the other sports, it's an every week, every night type of thing in terms of the grind and the challenge and the difficulty. So fans are going to be excited about it and look at all those things. Those inside the gates there at the 40 acres, they understand what the challenge is.
And you know what's cool, Craig, what you just said, and the 40 acres, for people that don't know, that campus is on 40 acres, downtown Austin. It's a magnificent campus. For example, Auburn's main campus is just under 2,000 acres. Then you got the vet school and all the other stuff out there. But the Texas fans about traveling, I know SEC fans, Matt, wouldn't you say it's going to be like, deadheads and spread heads, following the dead and the panic on the road? I think people are going to have mass migrations to Austin. Matt, would you agree with that? I think because it's a fun town. And hell, I like eating great food too.
Mass, it's already happening. Austin is way more. It's far more destined today. People are moving to Texas by the droves anyways, for a lot of reasons why they're moving to Florida. But you've got comedy like Joe Rogan's podcast now. You've got, it comes out of Austin, and he's got a whole comedy store there now, which is lighting it up literally lighting up the internet on a daily basis with the amount of traffic that they're pushing and what they're doing. So it's always been a place like that. It's always been a different part of Texas, because I grew up going to Austin all the time. Because we would go to South by Southwest and we would hang out. Look, Craig, I was not trying to put you in a bad spot. I just like talking smack to my friends. So I was looking for some cannon fodder. That's all that was about. Like, I just, I would be like, well, I was talking to Craig Way, voice of the Texas Longhorns, the other day, guys. And, he said, because it's going to be fun to welcome all of that, for me, the collision of the two. Like, it's my childhood, and now we've got, Texas in there. We got, Oklahoma. We're going to see some real shoot 'em out football. I'm excited. I wanted to say this because I played with AI the other day, and I was like jokingly around with it. And I said, well, come up with a new scheme for something that's never been done in offensive college football, a la different than Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer. And I named all these coaches, and I just said, joking around, like, how is that someone going to win the new college landscape? And I put all this data information in and all that kind of stuff. And even the chat GPT looked up and said, sorry, cannot compute. So, I think the narrative and the drama, that the stuff that's about to unfold is going to be really exciting, and it's palpable. And I think part of that is definitely, bringing in this not one, but two major, massive culture and difference into the SEC. And it's going to be exciting, I think. So.
Yeah, it's something that I think everybody's looking forward to. And you mentioned Oklahoma. The beauty of the Texas-Oklahoma rivalry is that it goes on as they take the step together into the SEC. That's not a rivalry that gets set aside. They will continue. And then when they get together on October 12th in Dallas, it'll be a second Saturday in October, and it's something special. And the fact that they're both going in, and they're going to have to deal with battling on a weekly basis in the Southeastern Conference. That's going to be a huge battle. I know Oklahoma's got a couple of big-time road tests in the SEC that they have to deal with as well. So that's all part of what this anticipation is all about.
Yeah, and Matt, jump back in here. I what Craig just said and Brendan's comments, I think Texas people, they know the people that run that school. They held revenue last year $280 million. They're into winning. Matt, if you had to say what do you think is going to be the most different for Texas versus the Big 12 what would the one thing be that they're going to have to overcome?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I think is going to help you. Growing up in the state of Iowa, having to play in Ames, Iowa in 28-degree weather in November sometimes was not always a great thing. Now, I think you won a close game there last year, if I'm not mistaken, Craig. But I remember when they had Breece Hall and Brock Purdy and had a pretty good team in there. I think being in the South and the geographics, going to places with weather is never going to bother Texas because they experience that pretty much themselves. I do think the grind, though, the overall grind and stylistically, you look at Mike Gundy's teams the last few years from Oklahoma State, they're not really defensive football teams. You're going to have some matchups in the SEC, in my opinion. Texas may be the better team on the field. They're going to get challenged different defensively. I feel at the line of scrimmage, they're going to see some teams that match up with their line of scrimmage, maybe more so in the Big 12. That's just a guess. I still think right now, if I was doing my prediction for this year, I got Texas 1 or 2 in the league, but I just think the physicality of line of scrimmage week to week is going to be a little bit different from the Big 12.
I agree that they will encounter that on both sides of the line. Now, I do think it's going to be a good challenge for what I think is one of the best returning offensive lines in the country for Texas. They have an Outland Trophy guy in Kelvin Banks anchoring the left side of the line and a great center in Jake Majors. They've got some guys who can do it. But to your point, what they're going to encounter from SEC defenses week in, week out will be the challenge. And it'll be the same thing for the Texas defense and encountering some of those outstanding offensive lines around the SEC, what they're going to have to deal with. And if there's a question about the Texas defense, folks are asking maybe about the interior of the defensive line simply because they had great players in Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat are now in the National Football League. And can Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins continue that level of performance there? And then Barron Sorrell, a kid from New Orleans who's a senior off the edge, along with Ethan Burke on the other side, and they've got a couple other guys. So that's where I think a big part of that challenge will come for Texas defensively on that week-in, week-out basis.
One more question. I know we're about out of time. What's the role of Vince Young at Texas? People up here followed him, obviously, with the Titans for a long time, and who's ever going to forget, as you called, 4th and 9 in the 2005 national championship game against Southern Cal. I mean, that was an incredible run for a touchdown. I'm sure you can still remember it like it was 5 minutes ago, but talk about that.
Well, Vince is a great ambassador now for Texas, and he certainly was on the field. And it was 4th down and 5 at the USC 8-yard line when he had that, and it looked like he just kind of glided into the end zone. But he did that all season long. And when we were working the broadcast that night, Keith Moreland, my analyst, when Texas had the big 4th down and 2 stop, when they stopped Lendale White there, we looked at each other and kind of knew, because we'd seen it for the prior 2 years, USC was not going to be able to stop Vince Young on that last drive. And it did come down to 4th down and 5 of the 8, but him making the run into the end zone, it was a fabulous game, obviously, with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush and Lendale White and Mike Williams and all that great USC team that had the 34-game winning streak. And so it was a hallmark moment, I think, in college football. And Vince, of course, had his NFL career and is still around and is an ambassador for Texas football in Austin. And so he'll always have his special place in that pantheon.
Listen, man, great show. Matt, John Hartwell, Brendan, everybody. Craig, thank you so much for joining us. I know we went long today, your first time. We won't keep you as long in the future, but just wanted to introduce you to our audience. That's a growing audience, but you are first class. My friend recommended you. And I said, I want to get Craig Way. Brendan said the other day, let's get the voice of Texas. Again, last week we had part of the Sooner Network, but you are
that's what you go to the voice of the school, and that is like the heart of really what's going on, the spirit, and they understand both sides of it, and all from the perspective of all sports. Dad, my father taught me that. So.
Yeah, and you do, Craig. I mean, just radio again. When I go, I like to listen to all these different games and all, but you do the homework. You've got a broadcast crew, but I can tell you take tremendous pride and I hear they call you Boom Pa, the kids and grandkids, and so you are loved by. I got a good scouting report on you from someone that knows you well, but tell people how they can follow you, keep up with all the great work that you're doing, and please come back on and join us and give us a retweet out there, and we'll do the same for you once you tell us about your show.
Well, I appreciate it. And I do. I host a show from 2 to 5 Central every day on our flagship station in Austin, Sports Radio AM 1300, The Zone. In Austin, you can find it on the iHeartRadio app there. And I enjoy it in the Texas Longhorn Radio Network. I enjoy doing the football, the men's basketball, the women's basketball, the baseball broadcasts. It's all a special thing. And don't worry about the fact that we went long, because I figured it just means more. So there we go.
It does. It does mean more. And I cannot tell you, man, how cool this is, because this is, again, radio is everything. And I'll never forget that 93 Auburn team on probation went 11-0, T-shirts everywhere, the best team on radio. So I've got a special place in my heart for radio. You got to have it. But thank you so much. And thanks, everybody, for watching today. Check out all of our sponsors at sidelines.live. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great one, everybody. Thanks for watching. Got Pat Dye Jr. on tomorrow with us. It's going to be fun.
So important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made in the USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.